Some of you might know that I'm an international student studying in the US. So I came here just over a year ago and I came with 8 other friends. So since then, I've learned a lot, grown a lot, and made a lot of mistakes. If I could go back in time, I would have wanted to see a video or some sort of guide to direct me or give me some advice on my journey here. So I decided to make one in hopes of helping all the international students out there who are aspiring or on the way to come to the US to study. So I'm gonna assume if you're watching this video, you already decided that you wanna come to the US. But if you haven't, here are some of the reasons you might wanna consider coming to the US to study. So number one, they have a recognized education system. So wherever you are in the world, they probably accept a US accredited college degree. I could be wrong, but that's what I've heard. Number two, they have a diverse amount of programs. You could literally major in anything here. If you go to universities like Brown University, you can create your own major and make your own courses, stuff like that. It's pretty unique and it's more free. Number three, you get a different type of cultural experience. So coming from where I'm from, Malaysia, the culture here is very different, so that is interesting. I'm not gonna comment if it's good or bad. It might be good for you, it might be bad for you, but to me personally, I like it. I found a lot of friends here. I like the culture here. I like the people here. I come from a big city and here I'm living in a small area, so the people here are very nice, they're very genuine, and I like that. And number four, you get to be more independent and you have some personal growth. So even if you've studied abroad for a short period of time, you understand that moving away from your parents or moving away from your comfort zone is challenging, and it will push you to grow more. It will make you more independent and self-reliant, which could be a good thing. So that might be something you want to consider. So next, let's go into how to study in the US legally. So to study here in the US legally, you'll have to obtain a couple legal documentation. I'll put a link in the description that talks about all these documentations. And I recommend doing your own research, looking at the US government websites to understand these documents through and through and see if you qualify or not. But to my understanding, essentially all you need is an F1 visa. And to get that F1 visa, you need to go through a tedious process. Number one, you need to apply to a US institution, any school here that can offer you an offer letter. Once you get that offer letter, you'll probably get an I-20 too. So yeah, once you have the I-20 and that offer letter, you can start the visa process. First, you're gonna have to pay a SEVIS fee. So yeah, SEVIS stands for Student Exchange Visitor Information Systems, and you're gonna pay a small fee. I think the fee depends on where you're from or what you're doing. So the fee kind of ranges from like a couple dollars to $300. But once you pay this fee, you can go on to the DS-160, which is where you put in all your information, and this is where you do the hard part of applying for a visa, essentially. So once you fill out the DS-160 form, you're gonna have to pay $160 as an application fee. So yeah, once you've done the DS-160 form and paid the fee, you can schedule a visa interview at your US embassy. So yeah, all you gotta do here is go for your interview and pass. I'm not gonna be talking about how to pass a visa interview here. There are so many other videos out there. I'll put some links to resources in the description below to help you guys understand the process in more detail. Great, so now you might wanna consider the cost. The cost of coming here on paper is, in my opinion, a lot higher than what it actually is. So I'll break it down here. So on paper, on my I-20, the estimated cost was about $31,300. And it's broken down into tuition fees, books, miscellaneous, living cost, insurance, stuff like that. And in reality, it's much cheaper, and here's my breakdown. Also, that $31,300 is for 9 months. So if you want the estimated amount for a year, it's about $41,700. This, of course, depends on a couple factors, like if you're taking summer classes, or if you're gonna travel, or if you're living in a high-end apartment, stuff like that. So here's the actual breakdown. I spent about $12,000 on tuition every semester, and we take about 2 semesters a year. And I spent about $1,300 a month for a living cost. And this includes rent, food, miscellaneous, eating out, buying things I need, stuff like that. And I'll put a screenshot here that includes the whole breakdown. So this comes up to about $39,600, but this is all before scholarship. So I study at the University of Toledo, and with my scholarship, I get about $8,500 off a year. And this depends. If you have a CGPA of over 3.0, you'll get a scholarship of $7.5 thousand a year. And if you have a GPA of 3.5 or higher, you're gonna get a scholarship of $8.5 thousand a year. This was the case for when I applied. It might be different now, but to my knowledge, it's not. Of course, if you're going to a different institution or different school, there might be a similar scholarship, but you want to make sure you want to talk to your course advisor and your program director and discuss the opportunities they have for you. And so yeah, including the scholarship, my cost goes down to about $31,000 a year. And honestly, I don't think I even paid $31,000 a year. I think I cut costs with like food and stuff like that a lot. This is just an estimate amount, and I live in a house right now. I used to live in an apartment for my first 8 months here, and my rent now is significantly cheaper. It was like $600 in the apartment, and now it's about $300 in this house. So yeah, now let me give you some tips on how to break down that cost even more. What I recommend is getting a job as soon as you get here. what you can do is apply for jobs on campus, and you're allowed to legally work up to 20 hours a week. So for you to do this, all you need to do is go around campus and look for jobs and tell them that you're an international student so they understand the process for you. I recommend working for F&B or food and beverage places, or even dining. This usually comes with free food or free meals, which is very helpful, and this can bring down your costs significantly. And more likely than not, you'll get that 20 hours a week. On top of that, you could also get a second job. Like what I did, I worked 4 jobs last semester. I did one as a hobby, I refereed. I did one to get paid while studying. It was a desk job. I did one to help me get free food, which was working F&B on campus. I also did one to help me increase my work experience, which was relevant to my field. So I was a teaching assistant. And I also did an internship last semester. So yeah, I managed to do what works for me. And obviously you have to stay within the boundaries, the legal boundaries. I think at the start you should take it slow and just work one job, maybe even 2. But then as you expand and you get more skills and you want to focus more on your future, you can expand your jobs and split them equally. You can do a 50-50 split, 80-20 or 60-40. It doesn't matter as long as you're comfortable with what you're working with. Also, getting a job on campus allows you to get a social security number. And this social security number can come in very handy. I'll talk about credit cards and CPT and internships later on, but you're gonna need the social security number for a lot of things. So yeah, I recommend getting a driver's license or an ID. So when you get a driver's license or an ID, you don't have to lug your passport or whatever identification you came in the country with everywhere you go. You can get an ID for about 20-30 bucks. You don't even have to take the driver's test. You can just get a temporary ID. I recommend taking a driver's test though, because that can come in handy. Like if you want to travel like me, you can drive or rent a car or even buy a cheap secondhand car. That comes in very handy as a student, and if you want to travel and learn more, gain more experience here. Some internships might require you to travel to their location if they're on site, so you're going to need a car eventually. Might as well start with a license as soon as you land, because that will determine your insurance prices later on. So if you have your license for a longer period of time, your insurance rates are going to go down. My next step is getting a credit card. So I save about almost 4 figures a year just by using a credit card. I have a couple credit cards, but here's the ones I recommend. I recommend getting the Discover Student Card, the Chase Freedom Flex, the Chase Freedom Unlimited, and the Apple Card. The Apple Card is optional, but I got it because my friends and we are all in the Apple ecosystem. So if you want to upgrade or get new things, we can use the Apple Card for a lot of cash back. It also works with other stores like Nike and stuff. So it's very helpful for us specifically, but it might not be beneficial to you. I recommend getting the Discover Student Card first because that gives you a lot of cash back, and also it helps you build your credit. A lot of credit companies don't really give out credit cards to people with no credit history. So Discover is one of those companies that do. And they start you off with a $1,500 credit line, or at least that's what it was for me. And that's very useful as a student. But only get a credit card if you can pay it back in full and on time every month. I personally pay my credit cards off every single month at a specific time where I know I'm going to optimize my credit score. So yeah, I'll list some YouTube videos down below on how you can understand how to better optimize your credit usage. Again, I want to emphasize you have to be able to pay your credit card in full and on time every month, or else don't get a credit card. You're only going to get yourself in trouble. All right, my next tip is how to do well in school. So yeah, this is based on my experience, so please take this with a grain of salt. Depending on your major, the way to score in each class might be different. Most of my classes are continuous assessment classes, which means I have quizzes, assignments, projects, and exams almost every week. This is very different from how it was back home, where I used to spend a year studying for just one exam, and that one exam would determine my whole grade for the entire year. I recommend you take time and be smart with how much effort you put in each class. I personally follow the 20-80 rule or Pareto's principle when it comes to classes that I'm taking just for the sake of my major. I do this because I want to optimize my grade, but I don't want to spend too much time doing these classes. I like spending my time doing personal projects, doing courses and certifications on the side, or even doing internships. You might be going for that 4.0, and that might require you putting 100% of your effort in that specific class. For the other classes that do interest me, I spend a lot of time focusing on how to optimize that class. For example, I recently took a class called Data Visualization. It was an art class and it interested me a lot. It taught me how to ask the right questions and boost my confidence when it comes to presenting. And I really appreciated the lecturer. He was very honest and very insightful, which was very helpful to me in my career. Great, now that we know that, let's go into the last tip I have, how to get an internship as an international student. So I plan on making a video that goes super in-depth on this topic, but for right now, this is what you need to know. To get an internship in the US as an international student, you're gonna need CPT. I won't go too in detail about the legal stuff because I'm not a lawyer, so I recommend doing your own research and looking at the US government websites to understand CPT better. But to my understanding, CPT means curricular practical training. The way CPT was explained to me is that you're allowed to do internship or apprenticeship or whatever ship as long as it's part of your academic progress at the university, as long as you apply and stick within the legal boundaries of CPT. You can talk to your course advisor about this. They might be able to add a course to your transcript. I personally know that a lot of engineering majors have internships built in their degree program. So they're mandatory for them to graduate, or at least that's how it is here in the University of Toledo. So to apply for CPT, you need a couple of things. You need a legit job offer, and you need to be enrolled in a specific course. So for me, that course looks like internship in mathematics, or internship in data science, or even internship in economics. The course name is going to vary for you based on your major, but that's what it's going to look like. And then you're going to go to your International Student Services office, or whatever it's called in your university, and tell them you want to apply for CPT. They're going to ask you for your offer letter and that course if you're registered for that course. They're also going to ask you to list out your start date and end date. And yeah, you might be asked to give a direct contact from that company you're going to be working with so that you can be evaluated on your internship. Most of the time, this is just a pass-fail class, so you don't have to worry too much. Just do well in your internship so this doesn't tarnish your grade. It's also important to note that you only have 1 year's worth of CPT. So let's say you do 3 internships for 4 months each. If you exceed it by a single day, this is going to overload into your OPT time. And I'll talk about OPT in a different video, but OPT is essentially optional practical training, which allows you to work in the US after you graduate, provided you find a company that's willing to take you in. If you're a STEM major, you get a 2-year extension for your OPT, and that's pretty cool, pretty nice. That gives you time to understand if you like working in the US, if you still like working here, being here, and make a better decision. I will definitely talk about OPT more in a different video. I personally have not reached that stage yet. I graduate this December. So yeah, when I do graduate, and if I do need OPT, I will talk more about that in a different video. So next I want to talk about how to apply for internships as an international student. So as an international student, the process is a little different. You're going to have to answer questions like, will you require sponsorship in the future, or do you require sponsorship right now? And those questions are kind of tricky because depending on where you are and your thought process, if you know you don't plan on working here in the future, you might be able to answer no. Or if you're planning to study here and work here after graduation, then that process might be different. You'll also want to clear things up with your course advisor and ask them for their advice on how you should answer these questions. It's also important to know that you can always change your mind. In the future, if you do decide you want to stay in the US and work here, you still have that OPT to use. So it's okay to make a decision later on and change your mind. My next tip is to use good language. This will ultimately reduce the perception of a language barrier and help you increase your chances of being hired. If you use good language and speak well or type well in your emails and stuff like that, companies are less likely to worry about the language barrier that's going to be there if you are an international student. A lot of companies assume that since you're international, you can't speak English well. But I find that that's false, and that's just a misconception. Lastly, I recommend using your unfair advantages. So every international student has an unfair advantage. They came from a different country. So this means they could be multilingual, they come from a different culture, so they have cultural experience, and they've been exposed to various challenges like, traveling across the world to study for university. So these unfair advantages can be used to your advantage. So I recommend using your struggles and hardships when you talk about yourself during your interviews to put yourself at advantage, stand out, and look more beneficial or valuable to the company. Some companies are big and they're looking to expand in different countries. So if you're multilingual, this could be very beneficial to them. That's all I have for now. For those of you who are planning to come to the US to study, I hope this video was beneficial to you or you found some value in it. I personally thought if someone shared their experience a year ago, I would have made a lot less mistakes and probably came up a little higher than I am now. Not that I'm not in a good place now. I think I'm personally in a very good place now. But sharing your experience helps. At least I believe that. So yeah, I hope that sharing my experience helps some of you out there who are planning to come to the US. In fact, if you're coming to the Toledo, Michigan area, feel free to hit me up. We could go grab coffee or hang out and maybe help your transition become slightly less tedious. Anyway, that's all I have for now. I hope you guys liked the video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.